Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Joanna G. Holden and I am a fantasy author and author tuber. My channel usually focuses on the exploration of how-tos of writing in fantasy and specifically in series, or in the chronicling of my writing through writing vlogs. However, today's video is an update video, even though I just did an update video 2 videos ago. Because apparently 2020 is the year of update videos. Now, I actually already did film this once, which I'm very sad I can't use the footage because my hair and makeup looked exponentially better. But it just ended up being so rambly and all over the place, and it was a pain to edit. And then my editing software decided to just stop working, and I lost patience and I decided to start over. Because yeah, I think I can do this better if I just sit down and act like this is a live stream and just try to say it in a way that does not require editing. So we're gonna see. I normally have to edit out about 20 million ums and so's. Those are like my 2 favorite words for some reason in videoing, but I can't do that now, or at least I won't be doing it very much. So we're just gonna see how this goes. So, update number 1 is Camp NaNo. Total fail. just gonna throw that out there. April Camp NaNo, you guys know I crushed it. I got my 35,000 words. I finished Littlehood, which is a middle grade fairy tale retelling that I am in the middle of working on. And I finished it. I felt so good about my work. This Camp NaNo, completely different story. In fact, the last 3 months have been a completely different story. So May and June and July, but in particular July, I was supposed to write 28 to 30 scenes-ish. Some of them were going to be first draft material. Some of them were going to be rewritten. Some of them were just going to be edited from the draft that I wrote in April. And I wrote 4.5. Not only did I not finish the draft, which I was hoping to do, finish the 3rd draft of the book, but I only made it up through the 1st act. I think 1 scene passed. So that was an epic fail, but I did end up figuring out a couple of things that were at the core of the story that were not working. Largely in regard to my main character, Blanche, who I was having a lot of trouble with and wasn't sure why. And in July, I kind of figured out a lot of that. So that still leaves me, though, at the end of July, now beginning of August, now almost a week into August, trying to figure out what comes next. So before Camp NaNo ended, I decided that I was being completely delusional to think that I was going to be able to, in any way, shape, or form, get out a decent draft before the baby got here. For those of you who don't know, I am almost 38 weeks pregnant. And then I had this deadline of October 5th for when I was supposed to hand over a polished manuscript, meaning all the developmental edits and all of the line edits and all that stuff that I would do myself would needed to already be done. It needed to already be done. And that was my daughter, apologies. She needed something. So, October edit, yeah, that wasn't going to happen either. So I finally just decided, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to stress myself out over a deadline that I cannot make. For a book that I want to be the very best that it can be, not just put out there because I had really, really hoped to get out 2 books this year. And I had thought that with the 2 that I picked, Snowdust, which is also a middle grade fairy tale retelling, and with my debut, which did publish this year, and then with Littlehood, I thought I could do 2 in 1 year. And just between pregnancy and 2020 being what 2020 has been, I could never have planned for this year to be what it has been. So I decided to backtrack. I said, okay, we're going to set aside the publication date and we're going to move that to 2021. I contacted my editors, amazing, amazing professional, who graciously pushed the date for my edit over to next March. So now we're looking at a release date for Littlehood of May-ish of 2021, which is perfect because that's when the paperback of Snowdust released. So it's like a full year and I will still have completed 2 books in a 1-year time frame, which I think is wonderful. But so the question now is, where does that leave me for here? Because also during the last 3 months, while I have been struggling with Littlehood and trying to get out, all this productivity and really epically failing, I've also been just devouring books and media all about the writing craft. I have had an overload of information and an overload of ideas for, if you may remember, Coastlander. I'm going to give a little bitty backstory here on Coastlander for those of you who are new, and for most of us who have maybe forgotten it completely because it's been on the back burner for so long. So when I first started my channel, I was working on an epic high fantasy saga series that I have been working on since I was 15, I want to say. And I had finally gotten together what I felt like was a decent outline. I made it in 2018? Yes, in 2018. I made it all the way up through the first draft to the beginning of Act 3. So 3/4 of the novel. And then in December of 2018, I hit a wall. I realized something similar to what's going on with me here with Littlehood, except where I was last year instead of where I am this year. And that was that it was not going where I wanted it to go. I knew that there was something wrong. I knew that there were some pieces missing. I knew that I had done something that wasn't working for what my vision was, but I couldn't pinpoint it. I didn't know what it was. I also was struggling because it had taken me 2 years to get to that point, and to go 2 years and then decide to start over was heartbreaking. It was so difficult, and I needed something to show for my efforts. I needed to prove to myself that I could actually write a book. And simultaneously, I was just getting into the idea of self-publishing, and I hadn't even put my toes in the water hardly for that yet. So I wanted something smaller scale from all this world building and all this series and all the characters, something that I could put out in a shorter amount of time and kind of test the waters of self-publication, hone my writing craft better, maybe figure out some things about character and plotting that weren't working in my high fantasy series through working on something that wasn't quite as life and death to me. And that is where the idea of the fairy tales came in, the fairy tale retellings, because I have loved the idea forever and ever of rewriting some lesser known fairy tales. And it just felt like it was perfect because they would be standalones, so there wouldn't be all this interweaving of plot lines. It would be stories that, in theory, were kind of already figured out. At least what happened was figured out. So I just got the privilege of coming in and figuring out how to make it all make sense and interweave everything and develop the characters and make it the best that it could be. And so that was my goal at the beginning of 2019, was to set off to write and to publish these 6 fairy tales. At the time, actually, it was 8, but I backed it off to 6. 2 of them were middle grade, 4 of them were YA, and to use those as my primary projects while I was working on the Coastlander project in the background, deconstructing, ripping it apart, figuring out what didn't work, all that stuff. And for the first year, it worked. 2019 was an amazing year. I got 2.5 books written. I made so much progress on Snowdust. I basically outlined and drafted and then edited and professionally edited and beta read and all that stuff in the span of about 1 year. And then, of course, it was released and published this year, and it was an amazing experience. I love this book so much. I had great hopes for Littlehood to be the same. And then when Littlehood decided to be Littlehood and not cooperate with me, I realized that it was going to take much longer than I had originally thought. So that brings me up to speed to where the last 3 months I've had all these ideas for what I am no longer calling Coastlander, but I don't have a better name, so I'm just going to call it that for sake of this video. But I had all these ideas for Coastlander. I figured out what was wrong. I figured out a whole bunch of things were wrong, actually, and I figured out some things that I wanted to do with it that would make it right, and basically gave myself permission to strip away all of my preconceived notions of what I thought this book was going to be and explore new ideas and explore new takes on this very basic concept of what I had. So that's what the last 3 months have been for me, is battling Littlehood while simultaneously having all these ideas for Coastlander. And it's had me thinking, because in theory, once baby has come and once we get into a little bit more of a swing of things and I kind of get my energy back and we start moving back toward where I was last year before all of this, and hopefully as 2020 comes to a close and maybe things start to get a little bit better in our country and in our world, as all of this is going on, I found myself asking the question, where is my heart in all of this? Because I love the fairy tales, and there's a part of me that thinks, oh, next year, easy peasy. I'll just put out, I'll fast draft 2 books, and then I'll take some time and I'll work on Coastlander. And then in 2022, I will do editing and all that stuff for the fairy tales, and I'll start popping them out while still working on Coastlander. But I do not want to set myself up for failure. I do not want to jump in at my ideal ability for writing only to find that I'm way down here because baby has a cold, or because I'm homeschooling my kids and this year my oldest goes into kindergarten officially, so there's a hiccup with that, or I have to spend a weekend planning on her school instead of working on outlining and stuff. I don't want to set myself up for failure because I feel like, in a way, I didn't really do that to myself this year in that I feel like I have failed, because again, I feel like this year held so many things that I could never have predicted that it's not my fault entirely. And that is where I'm sitting here, I'm rethinking. So no official announcements as to what 2021 is going to look like at this point, but I'm just giving you guys a heads up. It may look very different from what I had originally planned, which was to write and publish the first of the YA fairy tales, and to also write the second and begin the process of that for the next year. With all of these ideas for Coastlander, I've just come back to, this is a story that I love. This is the story of my life at this point. I mean, I've been doing it for well over 10 years, 15, I think, almost at this point. And I feel like there's a part of me that feels like if I don't write it now, when am I going to write it? And I don't want to jump in and just start drafting right away. I know that there is a heck ton of stuff that needs to be figured out before I could ever start putting pen to page. So that is really the question that I am mulling over right now, and kind of the purpose for this update video, outside of Littlehood's not going to be released till next year, is just thinking about what 2021 needs to look like for me as a writer and as a publisher. Because again, my dream would be to be able to continue putting out the fairy tales while also working on Coastlander and getting it ready to be published right after them, because I know it's still going to take time. But again, I don't want to set myself up for failure. So I guess the next 6 months, I would say the next 6 months are really going to be a time of figuring all of that out. I have officially given myself a break from working on Littlehood. I feel like I have needed one, a creative break from it, and I haven't been able to take one. And I think that's been part of the stress, is I haven't really been able to step away, get that fresh perspective, work on something else, force myself to see with new eyes, all that stuff. I haven't really had a chance to do that. And so I'm taking the rest of the month of August to just take a break from Littlehood and focus on, well, first and foremost, having the baby, and getting my daughter ready for school, but also on looking through what still needs to be done in my Coastlander prep before I could theoretically start drafting, or at least start outlining, right? So what do I still need to do before I can start working toward making this a real book? And then in September, I'm going to start back with Littlehood and try to use September and October to get this third draft out, which at that point I think will probably be a fourth draft, because I'm actually going back to the first chapter and starting over with some stuff that if I don't fix, the rest of it will make sense. Normally I just do one full draft at a time and then go back and make notes, but at this point, the first act of the book really is the foundation that's the rest of the story is built on, and right now it's not a very good foundation, if that makes any sense. So I need to go back and fix that. But September and October, I'm going to really focus on getting as many character-based and developmentally plot-based issues resolved as possible, and then get it out to beta readers at the end of the year. And then during this time, of NaNoWriMo and the end of the year and into the beginning of the next year, you may be wondering, for those of you who have been with me a while, what about Project Ether? That was the book that I worked on last NaNoWriMo. It's a co-written high fantasy book that I have had a lot of excitement for, and that is still moving forward. My co-author and I are also taking a slight break from that as well, for various life reasons for both of us. And again, some obvious ones right over here. We're just taking a bit of a break from that, and I am planning on returning to it for my NaNoWriMo project, and then just continuing to write on it until probably April to May of next year, and really working on getting out a solid, complete first draft, or at this point, I guess, a second draft of the novel that we can really start to work with. That is solid, that doesn't need a ton of developmental overhauls and complete rewrites of history and stuff, because that has been what has been getting in our way. So that, I already have the end of this year planned. I already have the beginning of next year figured out, all the way up through releasing Littlehood. And that is kind of where my plans end. And I want to keep it that way. I want to keep it that way for now, because that gives me the time that I need to really think through what I want and need to be doing. One of the factors in this is that because I am self-publishing, that is in this instance both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing in that I have the freedom to switch projects and to say, no, I'm just going to write these 2 middle grade fairy tales and I'm going to switch over and just pursue this other series. But at the same time, it is a curse in that, I mean, I'm self-published and I need to have some kind of a cohesive plan to get through this, and so that I don't lose traction, so that I can somehow pick up an audience, and so that I can continue making momentum and gaining speed, gaining more readers, and so on and so forth. So it's a giant mess that I'm going to figure out somehow this year. So that is where I'm at right now. And that is the end of the update video. So yeah, that's the end of the update. I wish that it was a more concrete, this is my plan for next year. But that's going to have to wait. Like I said, taking the entire month of August to work on Coastlander and figure out where I am with that, how much more it would take, what I need to be focusing on. That is going to make a huge difference. And I will definitely be updating you guys as soon as I'm able after that with where I am at. Probably another update video, and just to kind of tell you what's going on. But that is it as far as this update video goes. Y'all, 2020 has been such a crazy year. But I feel very positive, at least as far as my writing journey has gone. I've still been making progress, and I think maybe this weird intersection between working on the fairy tales and working on Coastlander is actually a good thing, because I haven't already committed to, all the YA fairy tales. I haven't already started that and committed to that yet. I still have some time to change my mind and to change things up. So I feel very grateful that I was interrupted at this point in time. I feel like that's what I've needed. But that is going to be all for today. Feel free to comment down below on how your year is going, and if you have had to switch up projects, what your reasons were for it and how you feel like it went. Or if you're fixing to change projects, what your plan is moving forward. If you want my Instagram account, I post a lot more updates on there, and I post a lot more of things that I'm discovering about writing crafts and questions that I ask about your writing process, and sharing some of my own writing process as it continues to develop as an art. All my social media links are in the description box below, as well as my website and the links to buy my debut middle grade fairy tale retelling that all of this got started with, Snowdust. That's down there as well. I hope you all have an amazing rest of the weekend writing, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.